Yay! Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining me today. Now, I'm sure you know the rules by now. If you like what you see and hear, please do press subscribe, and of course the little bell to get your notifications so that you don't miss marvelous interviews like I do with today's guest, Kevin Tumlinson. Some of you, I'm sure, will recognize his name or his face or both. But Kevin is an award-winning and best-selling author, a prolific podcaster, and a popular public speaker. He is the Director of Marketing and PR for Draft2Digital, which is the leading distributor of books for independent authors and small presses worldwide. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. It's really great to have you on the channel.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. It's only been a couple of weeks since you and I spoke last, but I'm glad we had this chance to catch up.
Yeah, me too. No, thank you. It's lovely. It is genuinely, it's lovely. But I want to know, last time we talked a lot about me, but I would love to know a little bit more about you this time. And I wonder, we are obviously going to be talking about Draft2Digital, but I'm curious about you and your journey into writing and publication and kind of how you got to where you are now. Because from reading I've done around you, you've been in the creative industries, the creative world for a long, long time, not solely with your books, but in other ways as well.
Yeah, most of my life I've been in a creative industry in one form or another. Yeah, there's an apocryphal story that I made up myself about when I was 5 years old. I wrote my first book. I hand wrote it on paper and stapled it together and all that. And that was the start. That was a self-publisher right out of the gate. But yeah, I've worked in all the industries. I worked in film and TV. I worked in radio. I worked in newspapers and magazines and that sort of thing over the years. And when I got into marketing, I became a copywriter and wrote a lot of things that you've probably seen, especially in particular, if you've ever purchased an HP laptop, you've seen my work on the palm rest of the HP laptop. But yeah, I've been doing things like this all my life. It's been very exciting. But the writing novels and becoming an actual author was a dream from day one for me. And so when I finally got to that point, I embraced it and ran with it. And I did start with an actual contract with a publisher at first. But I tell you, when that kind of fell apart, things kind of went south with that. But once I discovered the world of self-publishing, it was like coming home. That was just for me. This was just for me.
Yeah. So you've made that sound, yeah, I got an agent. You made that sound really, really easy, as if you suddenly decided to start writing and pop, it just happened. But I'm sure that wasn't the case. Or was it?
No, it wasn't. It was I had been sending things in for years. By that time, I'm sorry. I have 1 second.
That's okay.
I apologize. I did mute it so that no one had to hear me clear my throat. Yeah, I had been submitting things to agents, all the way back to, I believe my first submission was when I was in junior high school, very young, and didn't get much traction. Learned a lot of things from the rejection letters that I never considered, and then kind of did a deep dive into like Writer's Market and Writer's Digest. And my grandmother, God rest her soul, she enrolled me in, at that time it was called the Writer's Digest School. Now I think it's like Writer's Digest University. And I was partnered with an author in Texas, or my home state, and was able to get some mentorship into writing and getting query letters figured out and that sort of thing. And it was kind of out of the heels of that I landed my first offer, and I thought I'd made it at that point. I really did, but it turned out to be fool's gold, I think, in a way. I mean, it was a great experience. I learned a lot from it. I grew from it, but I had a terrible contract. Things fell apart. And so I thought my career was over. And then a couple of years later, I kind of just stumbled onto the idea of of self-publishing. Amazon at that point was purchasing CreateSpace. I, like most other early authors, didn't think about ebooks. That wasn't even part of my strategy at first. It was all about, get that book out there, get that print book out there. So that's where I started. But yeah, and that was the launch of the whole thing. Once I kind of figured that business out and figured out how to get a book pulled together and how to get it distributed, I was in love with that whole process. Which is not to say I wouldn't do another contract if another publishing deal if the deal was right. But so far, the people who've approached me, the deal has not been to my liking. Not yet.
No, I mean, genuinely, it's good for you to kind of know the value of your work and what you want from an agent or a publisher and the kind of relationship that you want to have with them. Because you then went on to self-publish, obviously, and you've had a very, very good career. Tell our listeners, the kind of books that you write and tell us about them. Yeah.
I mean, I started life as a sci-fi writer because I thought that's what I wanted to be. And I do like science fiction, but what I've discovered over the years is I like a particular type of science fiction. I was never much into, I was never the nuts and bolts, steel ships in space sci-fi writer. I was the guy who was writing about, pardon me, I'm so sorry. There's something in the air right now. I was the guy writing about, the characters and really deep diving into what these characters were experiencing and how they were interacting with each other. And I sort of discovered along the way that that's probably the best approach to fiction. And I kept telling people, I would always have people say, I don't read sci-fi. And I would say, well, my books, I mean, if you were to take those characters out of science fiction and put them in some other setting, it'd be the same story. And then somewhere along the way, I was doing a podcast with Nick Thacker, a fellow friend of mine and a fellow thriller author. And he dared me on a show that we were doing. We were live on air. He dared me to write a thriller. And so I did, to meet that dare. And that book just took off. And I realized that I'd been telling people my secret for a long time. It's all about those characters. So it really did not matter what the setting was. I was a character writer. And so I found that genre and I love it. And these days, I will write pretty much anything I feel like writing. But most of my books are thriller novels. And most of those have been archaeological thrillers.
Yay, exciting. Yeah, I like archaeology myself. But I think you've exemplified there something that I say to people a lot is, if your characters are good enough, not that the plot doesn't matter, but I feel it really is secondary. And in fact, if your characters are strong enough and engaging enough, your reader will follow them anywhere. So whether it's in outer space or in a thriller and an archaeology story, they'll go with it.
Strong characters will overcome weak plots, but weak plots will never overcome, or strong plots will never overcome weak characters. And you see that all the time in film. I mean, just as an example, you've got Indiana Jones. This is everybody's go-to archaeologist, right? The films themselves, they're great. They're full of adventure. But imagine replacing Indiana Jones with any other character, and the movies just don't hold up. I mean, there's a kind of it's somewhat apocryphal, but there's this idea floating around that if you took Indiana Jones out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, nothing would have changed in the film. So he wasn't actually important to the film, but no one would have watched that film. Like, everyone went to the theater to see Indiana Jones. And the same with the following movies. So, character can make up for a lot of weaknesses in a plot. I mean, clever characters really drive the plot. And that's how I write all my books. Those characters are the ones making all the decisions. They're the ones that are actually opening all the doors and checking all the treasure chests. They're the ones that are there for the reader to follow. And that's the actual story. It almost doesn't matter what the rest of the book is about.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Before we go on to talk about Draft2Digital, I know that Well, I want you to tell us about van life. I know
Oh
this is
yeah.
something that you write about. What's van life?
So van life, the sort of textbook definition of that is if you are living full time in a conversion van, a camper van, there's that whole hashtag van life. I write about this a lot because we did that for about 3 years. Before that, we had actually there was a time earlier where we lived in an RV full time for about 2 or 3 years. We're nomadic, my wife and I. We really like to travel. And right at the start of the pandemic, we had actually we were renting an apartment at that time. We had sold our house. We were renting an apartment with the intention of getting on the road full time again. And we had literally handed the keys over to the management and we were all set up to get on the road, and they announced that they were, everybody needs to stay in place, lock down, and protect yourself from the pandemic. And so we actually were literally homeless for a good 2 or 3 months. We had nowhere to take the van because there was just everything was closed. But once that kind of opened up a little, mid 2020, we got into the van, we got moving, and we were on the road full time throughout the entire pandemic. I mean, talk about social distancing. I mean, we were in the middle of Montana, or the middle, we were in all these remote places and just enjoying our lives. And I was writing and doing stuff for D2D. At one point during starting mid 2020, we started doing a daily live stream. So somehow, some way, despite being in the middle of nowhere all the time, I managed to be live on the air every single day for 3 solid months. And yeah, so that's the whole van life experience. If you've ever dreamt of it, it's, you can find tons of videos on YouTube about people doing this. I have some recommendations on what you should do financially for this, rather than buying a brand new van the way we did. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. I wrote probably about 6 books total while doing that experience, and just everything that we encountered, I've in one way or another, that stuff has folded into my fiction over
I was going to
the
ask
past few
that.
years.
Yeah, did it
Yeah.
impact your storytelling? But yeah, clearly it did.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have an entire, so one of my series is it's a female protagonist. She's a fugitive. And I can definitely tell you that a lot of our experience influenced that character and what she does. She's not in a van, she's not like traveling like that, but she's on the run. And so, when you have had to figure out like where you're going to sleep for the night, and you end up sleeping in a Cracker Barrel parking lot or a Walmart parking lot or something like that in this tiny little van, you learn a lot of things and you gain a lot of experience that can be applied towards writing characters like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And where were some of your favorite places to travel to? Because you were in the States. Did you stay in the States, or did you go north or south?
We did stay in the States because borders were pretty much closed. We couldn't get into Canada at all. We might have been able to do Mexico, but we weren't aiming that way. But so we stayed in the contiguous United States here. And some of our favorite places, like one of our favorites, there's a town called Holland in Michigan. And it's near Lake Michigan, and that's just a gorgeous little area. And we found an RV resort where we stayed for most of 2 months, and we got to meet all the people and hang out, and it was a really interesting. We were there toward the end of the tourist season, so all the touristy stuff was closed, but we were able to meet a lot of folks who are locals, but also folks who are there seasonally. And we just made a lot of friends and just had it was just a great experience. We did things like that, and then we went to South Dakota, and there's a huge national park there that you can stay in, and there was a lot of small places along the way. I mean, sometimes we kind of struggle to remember, like, what state was that in, and lots of little, I mean, I like to hike. I'm probably not very I probably shouldn't do it the way I do it, but I'll get up and go. Lots of places to do that, explore and, check out
Oh,
nature.
life on the road, hey, life on the
Yeah.
road. It's
Yeah. But
probably the
now we're
best
in a
way
house.
to have
So
spent the probably the best way to have spent those lockdown years was kind of roaming in your van.
that's what we think, at some point during that, we decided we wanted to build a home. We really sort of decided we wanted to buy a home. And it turned out that in the area, the Austin, Texas area, houses were just selling as soon as they went on the market. So the only way we were getting houses is if we built one. And it just sort of worked out because we could say, it took 2 years to build this house. And so we're like, no problem. We don't have rent. We don't have anything. We're in a van. I mean, we've been living here for, at that point, we'd been living in it for more than a year. And so we just got on the road again and just went coast to coast. When author conferences started finally opening up again, we would drive to an author conference and we'd live there for, a couple of weeks. And so, it was really just the best way to not only spend the pandemic. I joke, I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but my joke is that, this is how we spent our pandemic vacation. But it's not only that, but it's also, it was just an opportunity to connect a little better with the author community, because everywhere we went, there was a whole community of authors and writers right there. And we got to not just, I'm used to talking to them at conferences and that sort of thing, but I could actually go and break bread with these people and we could just hang out and just spend an evening together by a fire on the beach or something, so we were able to do a lot of that kind of stuff. And that really changed I already had a very warm spot in my heart for writers, but that really sort of changed my perspective on quite a few. It ingrained me a little more in the community.
Oh, nice. That's lovely. Ah, well, you've had a busy time of it. So in between all of these writing, writing 6 books, all the traveling, somewhere in amongst that, you also got attached to Draft2Digital and became their director of marketing and PR. So how did that come about?
Yeah. At first, I want to say I've written a total of 70 books. I want to put that out there because
That's no mean feat, is
when
it?
people are checking facts on me later, I want them to know. No, yeah, I started working with Draft2Digital back in 2016, and it came off of I was doing my podcast. I had the Word Slinger podcast, which started to become somewhat popular with the indie author crowd, and I interviewed Dan Wood from Draft2Digital. And at the end of the call, I had a little copywriting marketing business and I just offered to do some marketing work for D2D. I said, if you guys ever need a hand, let me know. And turned out they had lost their director of marketing and were preparing to launch the Universal Book Links, which was brand new at that point, books to read and all that. And so they were asking for some help with that. So I popped in, did some contract work, and I think it wasn't even a month later that they offered me that role. And I remember at the time they had said, we know about your travel and we know about your business and all that, and you can keep doing that. We just need help with marketing. And so yeah, I took that over, and that's been a remarkable experience. I mean, because of Draft2Digital. Again, I've connected very deeply with the writing community, but also the folks who support that community, the influencers and the industry folk who build all these remarkable tools. I was already, ironically, I was already kind of friends with a lot of these people. Damon Courtney, for example, the creator of Book Funnel. I was in the room. We were at a conference in Austin together with about 20 other people. And I was in the room when he said, I'm trying to build this thing. I'm thinking of calling it Book Funnel. And here's some logos. Which logo does everyone like? And, so, I mean, I was right there at the roots of that company. I wish I'd thrown some money at him,
Yeah.
here's $1,000, give me a piece of the company. But yeah, so it's been through Draft2Digital, a remarkable company founded by an author and his friends, I've been privileged to see the evolution of this business of
Mhm.
the author world. And we've been a big part of it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Draft2Digital definitely have been a very big part of that, no
yeah.
doubt about it. So a lot of my audience, they're newer writers, so they're coming into this world and they're just learning about it and what's out there. So
Mhm.
give us for those that haven't come across Draft2Digital before, what does the company do? What services do they provide?
We are known as we're what's known as a publishing aggregator, meaning you can bring your manuscript to us in the form of a Word document or an RTF file, or you can even bring a pre-formatted EPUB. If you have a specific way you want it, formatted, you could do that yourself and bring it to us. We will convert your manuscript for you for free and to ebook format, which these days is just EPUB. It used to be EPUB and Mobi, and we'll do that for you for free. We'll distribute it for free. We have templates that you can use to make it look professionally laid out. We will also do the print version of the book, and we have some cool conversion tools I can talk about. But everything we do for the author is free. The only money we ever make is when you sell a book through us, through one of the retailers. It's around 15%. It varies slightly depending on the retailer, but we take about 15% from that sale, and that's the only money that Draft2Digital makes, which means that we literally only make money when you make money. So we are always looking for ways to help you make money.
Yay. So we're just kind of delve into what an aggregator is then. So
Yeah,
if I choose not to go exclusive
right.
with Amazon, then I could upload my book to Draft2Digital, and Draft2Digital will distribute that book to not just online retailers, but brick and mortar retailers as well.
It's available to brick and mortar retailers through print, but we don't distribute to them per se. They have to actually order it. So, you would still have to market to the individual stores, or get your marketing, give your marketing has enough momentum that stores are just actively ordering. But the print side of our business, our partner is Ingram Spark. So we have the same distribution network that they have. You can get into brick and mortar stores if they're willing to order, and the same is true of libraries and that sort of thing. And the same is also true of ebooks through libraries. We have several library distribution partners like Overdrive, for example, where you can distribute your books to them through us, and then they have their separate little pay models. That the rates that we take are different between ebook and print by necessity, but we always aim to get you the best deal that we can possibly get you. We're not interested in making a profit at the expense of the author. We are trying to form a little partnership here where it's the whole rising tides idea, right? All our boats need to go up. So we're going to try to make sure your boat goes up.
Yay.
I should say, so primarily we have focused on ebooks for most of our existence. Print, D2D print is new. We actually just took it out of beta in March of this year, 2023. So there's still some things that we are, building around that and improving around that. So, it's been interesting to see print, because print is such a different animal from what we're used to. But we're really excited about what's coming. There's a lot of stuff coming for D2D print in terms of refining. We're going to add more formats or more trim sizes, for example. We are adding more formats like hardcover and that sort of thing. All that stuff is on the board. It's just not yet available.
Watch the space.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I found fascinating when I first set up my account was I didn't realize how many places there are to sell a digital, let's stick with ebook, to sell an ebook. So for me in the UK, in the West, particularly Western Europe, you know, I know about Kobo, I know about Amazon, I know about Barnes and Noble and Robertson's, but actually there are many, 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 many more
Yes.
places
Hundreds,
that
thousands.
sell
Yeah.
ebook. Yeah,
Yes.
all across Europe, all across all the other continents that there are, and that is something I think really special that D2D can bring to the
There
market.
are actually retailers in the world that you can only get to if you're in, I don't know about in the UK, but here in the United States and the Americas, there are retailers in Europe and Asia that you can only get to through Draft2Digital. Like there's no other way to get to them. Now, when you look on our site, there's like these primary storefronts that we get you to. What isn't quite as evident on that site is that some of those have their own network of other stores. So you distribute to, and I think Tolino is one of these, like you distribute to Tolino, and then that book goes to this like network of several hundred other outlets worldwide that is under Tolino. So that's how we're doing that, is we're always looking for those strategic partnerships where we can maximize the reach of the book. And it's because we are, you know, I don't know if your listeners and viewers are familiar with the whole exclusivity versus going wide dynamic, but our whole business is built around the idea of being as wide as possible, you know, making your book available in as many places worldwide as possible. Because as great as Amazon can be as a storefront, you know, if you're exclusive to Amazon, they really only, I think at this point, they're only in like 13 regions worldwide. For the longest time, it was only 11. I think it's 13 now. You know, that's out of hundreds, maybe several hundred regions, you know, worldwide. I think at last count, we figured out that between us and Smashwords, which we acquired a little over a year ago, we hit every single region on the planet at this point, even some of which where your books might actually be illegal. You know, there are some regions out there that are a little more strict about certain types of content. But yeah, we're constantly building that network. Like it is a growing beast. And we're also very we do not do business with groups that we think are taking advantage of authors, or, you know, maybe they don't pay on time, or, you know, something else is problematic about them. We have been known to cut out even some major retailers like Google Play. Nothing wrong with Google Play. I go direct to Google Play, but their process required authors to like make us their publisher, or, you know, grant rights to us and things. You know, there was just a lot of that we didn't feel comfortable with when it came to our authors. And so we made the decision that until that process changes, we don't distribute to Google Play. And, you know, a lot of authors are asking for it, but and I, you know, I'm one of them. It would certainly be a lot easier for me to push a button one time rather than copy everything over.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's the thing that I liked most about D2D when I started, was there was clearly this dedication to looking out for the author's best interests. And I think some of that comes from the fact that there are just dozens of authors on staff at this point. Like, you know, I'm just one of several. You know, when I first started, I was like one of two. But now it seems like half our staff have written and published. So we understand this business inside and out.
I think that shows, you know, just giving that Google Play example, I think you're exemplifying that really well there, how it is a company that is by authors and for authors. And so
Yes.
I think that's a real unique selling point for D2D as opposed to some of the others. I'm just going to sort of go back to the different regions that there are. Just realizing that was such an eye-opener to me, and I think it will be to many in kind of the West, that there are these whole other regions. And I think it was Joanna Penn, good old Joanna. She always has her words of wisdom, but who just really made me realize that places like India and China are not predominantly, but a lot of people are reading on tablets and are reading in English. And that to me was just like, oh yeah, of course. Why did I not think about that? But it's just this whole market that's available to people who use a service like yours that wouldn't otherwise be.
Yeah, if you pick, like, and Joe and I have had conversations about this a million times over the years, but there was an entire computer evolution in the African regions that skipped desktop computers altogether. It went from no machines to a scant few laptops here and there to directly to mobile technology. And so and if you really think about it, like it's an ideal technology for that region because battery power can be monitored pretty closely, and it's easy enough, quote unquote. Like if you've got a means of charging those, you can kind of keep those going, whereas you have to have constant power for like a desktop computer. So and they're online, the connectivity is pretty solid. So you've got this technology that just opens new doors for all these people who didn't have any resources before. They've got access to the internet, so they can learn anything they need to learn. They can create, there's things like transactions where people can actually support a business. So like this kid in some poor village somewhere can actually start a business from a phone and get investors and do very, very well. But the whole, like, the barrier to entry for writing because of these devices is gone. I tell a story all the time about how for a time there, I wrote at least 3 books on using nothing but my iPhone and my thumbs
Shocking
as
a
a
lot of
kind of
people.
experiment. Yeah. And I tell people all the time about when I was in line for a ride at Disney World for like 4 hours, and I wrote a short story, and then I used Canva and made a cover for it, and then I uploaded everything to Draft2Digital and converted it into an ebook. And before I got on the ride, I had a new book for sale. And if I can do that in line at Disney World, like, imagine what these kids can do, and with nothing but an iPhone, nothing but a smartphone, and the all the time that that they have, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and
so
I want our writers out there to hear that as well. You
that's what
don't
yeah,
have to have 3 hours of silence, of having the perfect space. You
with
can
your Earl
have
Grey and your yeah, you having those things is a wonderful luxury, and I have my process and my setup that I prefer. But for decades, I have pushed myself and experimented to try to figure out, like, what are the limits here? What can I get away with? I've written things on the back of receipts from donut shops. I've written things, I've spent like a day and written something out of a hotel lobby. Um, and the thing I want authors, will be writers is what I call a lot of them, will be authors. If they haven't written yet, like this, there is nothing in your way now. And one of the best things about Draft2Digital is how we empower authors to do this and get that book out there to as many people as possible. This is, I should say, because the exclusivity versus wide thing, one of the advantages of exclusivity has been, quote, easy money, because exclusivity almost always just means Amazon, by the way. I mean, I don't think really anyone has an exclusivity program at this point besides Amazon. And so they have that global fund, and it pays out, and they have an easy system for earning a little bit of scratch. I was doing some of the math because I'm writing a book right now about the whole indie author space. And I was doing a little bit of math to figure out, like, if I have a book that I charge $6.99 for, and someone checks that out through Kindle Unlimited, I'm only making like $1.50, maybe $2 if I'm lucky. But there's a limit to the number of pages that a reader can in KU can read each month. Like, not their physical limit. There's a limit imposed by Amazon of 3,000 pages each month. That means that if I have in my Dan Collar series, I have like 13 books. So if someone checks out book 1 and reads that, and they keep reading through, there will be a point at which I am no longer making any money from those books. That reader will have hit their 3,000 page maximum, and the rest of what they read out of KU, I don't get paid for. So there's a ceiling on how much I can make per reader in that program.
I
And
did not
it's,
know that.
yeah, and it's not a lot of money. You're selling, this is what you can make a lot of money in KU. Like if thousands of readers discover the book, great. But if you're only getting 1 or 2 readers a month who discover you, there's a cap on how much you're going to make for the book and a cap on how much you can make on that reader each month. So
that's a little fact that they don't publicize too much.
You have to look at the math to see that, and I'm not a math guy. So, you have to hit me in the head with a math hammer to really get it through to me. But now you have no such limitation on wide, but the disadvantage of going wide is that there's no fund. There's no one paying you per page read. So it can be a little tougher to make that money. But I started figuring that out right away that, once my books started selling, the number of units sold was earning me more than I was getting in page reads on Amazon. I knew I need to pull. I only had a handful of books in KU at that point. I'm like, okay, now it's time to pull them all out. So there's a strategy I can recommend to people, which is, if you have 3 books or fewer, I would leverage Kindle Unlimited to make some money. But the disadvantage, the biggest disadvantage to exclusivity, and KU in particular, all your marketing energy, effort, and money is going towards building an audience that only reads on this very narrow part of a single retailer. And you're not building up your readership and audience on other platforms. So when it does come back around and you decide, okay, now it's time for me to pull my books, you are literally starting from scratch with the marketing with no readers. So if you take a dip from losing those page read dollars, it's not going to immediately be made up on sales because there's no audience. You can't really promote. It's hard for you to promote to. There are ways to do this, but I mean, it's really difficult to promote to an audience that can't buy your books. I mean, how do you market to that group and build that mailing list? So I think you're safer, honestly, and this is Kevin, the author, talking, but start off with wide. Don't do the KU thing, because you're just putting limits on what you can earn.
And mailing list is the key. That's something
mailing list is the
coming
key.
up for me a lot recently. Mailing list. But so we've talked about D2D, how they are able to get your books into lots of different retail spaces.
Yeah.
But that is not all that they do. They offer lots of other wonderful services and little perks, I would say. And one of my favorites is the author page. So you can design your own little author page where there's some information about you and you've got your catalog there, and it just makes it's like a one-stop stop for your fans. So I really like that. That's one of my favorite features, but there's many, many others. What are some of the sort of highlights and some that you like?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to narrow this down because we do so much. There's so much that we've built for authors. The author page is built on the backbone of something we call a universal book link. And that is a single link that can send readers to everywhere your book is sold, and now in like every format. Okay. So instead of when you send out a tweet or an email, or you're on Facebook or something and you want to promote a book, instead of having to do like, here's 50 links to where you can buy the book at the store you want, you can put one link and then people can go and buy from their store of choice. Okay. And they can even say, like, from now on, when I click on one of Kevin Tumlinson's links, I want to go to Kobo or Barnes and Noble, whatever their preferred store is. They can set that as the default. There are so many things built on that one piece of technology in our company. So the author pages are one, which is all about you, and you can feature a book and you can have your series listed out and all of that. We have something called book tabs, which are kind of like a little product page for your book and specific to that book and can include the series at the bottom. We have another thing called reading lists, this is not just for authors. This is for anybody. Like if you're a podcaster or YouTuber, like you can actually set up an entire page with little thumbnails and links to all these books that you want to promote. It doesn't even have to be your books, it can be anybody's book. I used this for a long time with my podcast. I would have, every time I had a guest on who had a book, I would create a universal book link and I would add their book to my reading list. And so, and then I'd promote that thing because I can get affiliate dollars. You can associate like Amazon associate account, Apple's affiliate account. You can associate all those with your books to read account. And so it's automatically inserted in those links. So if someone goes and clicks on a book, even if it's your book, if they click on a book and they buy it, not only would you get the sale at that point, but you would get a little kickback from the associate link or whatever that you had associated with it. And you could do the same with other people's books. I've got a reading list called Thriller Cart. And on that list, I promote not just my books, but like, Dan Brown and James Rollins and, a whole bunch of other authors. So when I send that out to my mailing list and they find a book they like, I get something off of that. They buy Dan Brown's latest book, I get X number of cents. It's like, a hundredth of a cent, but it can add up.
Yeah.
And by the way, on Amazon, if they click that link and they go to Amazon, they don't even have to buy the book, but if they're just still surfing, there's like a 48-hour window there where if they just buy anything on Amazon, you get credit for it. I've had people buy like refrigerators and things like that, and I get, pretty nice little affiliate kickback at the end of the month. So, so those are,
that's a really nice tool, that reading list. I didn't know that's, I think that's new. Is that quite new?
We've had it for a few years now, but it is, I think we probably don't talk about it enough because anybody can build one. We use them for, we do author promotions. We have someone who manages promotions for authors now. And one of the things we'll do is a bestseller list. And so we build the bestseller list on books to read. And so, we can have them. It's nice. It's a nice carousel format and everything. It's very nice looking. And then we can promote those out and help the author sell those books. So, there's a lot of little tools like that on the books to read side. And,
so tell us about that. What's the books to read side?
Oh, so books number2read.com is, that's our, we'll call it a sister site. Like we built that as a very reader facing property, but there's this whole slew of author tools built into that. One of those is the author page. The book reading list, the reading list page, all that stuff is built into that. You can manage it all there and create your own universal book links there for any book. I should reiterate that because it's important for authors to know. You can create a universal book link for literally any book. It doesn't have to be your own. And if you're using affiliate accounts, you can make money from sales on those books. But I like to use the books to read link for my ads, like Facebook and that sort of thing, because when people click that, first of all, I get some extra data. I can see like where people are buying. I don't have to have a different ad for every retailer. There's all kinds of perks and benefits to that. But so that's something we've had that around for a while, and we have other promotion tools. We do, our promotions manager will send out emails saying, we have relationships with all these retailers. So one of the things we try to do is get these promotions for our authors. And so we do a lot with Apple. Apple will say, we're going to do we want to feature books that have flowers on the cover. And so, we go and, tell our authors, hey, we're looking for flower books. And they have a form they can fill out and say, I have a flower book. And then that may or may not get into Apple's promotion, but at least there's some momentum there. But we've got relationships like that with all kinds of retailers now. So, and that's growing. We have a promotional price tool. So your book, you can say, I use this one all the time. You can say, I want my book to be priced at $2.99, now through June 15th. And so we will automatically adjust the price the day you want that promotion to start and adjust it back up at the end of the promotion. And then you can use your universal book link to promote that on social media or elsewhere. So, we've got a growing list of tools that help authors actually sell books, which
Yeah.
is the number one thing authors really want. So,
No, it's a wonderful, wonderful service. It really is. And for our listeners or viewers, I really, really recommend that you go and check it out and go and have a browse around. And you can have a free account as well, so you can go in and just take a look around and see what
yep.
it's all about and how it all works. And some of the terms that Kevin's mentioned will start to make sense as you kind of,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I
If
remember he was talking about that. I
Let
remember
me just
this.
say, if anything I say doesn't make any sense, email us at support@draft2digital.com. You'll get an actual human being who speaks actual English. They're only available through at our office hours, but they'll respond to email during our whenever our office hours come back around. So if you're overseas, you can even call them. We have numbers in a couple different regions, so you can actually get a human being on the phone. They will walk you through whatever you need. You never have to worry about any of this. But I want to make something really, really clear to people, because it's unbelievable to some folks, but we legitimately do not charge you anything at all for all this stuff. And you own your book throughout. So even if you were to use us to convert your book into an ebook, you could literally download that ebook and take it directly to each retailer on your own. You do not have to use us to distribute your book. We prefer that you do, but you don't have to do that. And the same is true with everything else. All the other features that we have, and there's so many, they're all free to use. We never own any copyright. There's never any, we'll give you a free ISBN, all this stuff is yours to use, but you don't pay a dime, and we never own a thing.
Yeah, good point to make. Thank you for emphasizing that. No, it's important, because that's not the case with all author services at
No,
all.
it's not.
So
No.
listen, we are recording this towards the end of May, and there was two things I wanted to kind of ask you about, because they're quite topical at the moment. One is the increase in printing costs.
Yes.
And distribution costs, I think, as well. That's gone up as well. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that. Some authors I speak to are kind of panicking about it, and oh my God, I've got to change all the prices of everything. And then others are like, well, no, it's fine. It's not a big deal. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, if you're counting on a certain margin of royalty for your books, you will have to adjust your price, because that margin is going to be whittled down slightly. This is something we all kind of saw coming, because of there were issues with supply chain that go back all the way to 2020. We haven't seen a spike. I haven't personally seen a spike in like the cost of distribution at all, other than maybe shipping rates have potentially changed here and there. But the actual cost of print, yeah, that's definitely gone up for a lot of folks. The Amazon in particular, they just announced that their cost of print is going up. My take on this is you have to pay attention to what the market price of the books in your genre is, rather than the print cost. Because if you start adjusting your price to compensate for print costs, and it makes it that book $3 or $4 more expensive than the same books in the same genre, then you potentially are going to turn off readers. Now, I've raised my prices here and there, and think sometimes that it has a positive effect. So you may experiment, but on the whole, readers aren't going to buy a book that is several times more expensive than others. They're used to a certain price, and until the entire industry starts to go up, you're going to want to kind of try to match that level of pricing. If you don't want to go in the negative, but I will say D2D, and I'm pretty sure Amazon is the same. I don't know for sure, but I know with Draft2Digital, like, we have safeguards in place to keep you from going into the negative for a book sale. You can override those safeguards. That's up to you. But we alert you and say, hey, if this book sells at this price, it's going to cost you $2 every time this book sells. And then you can make your decisions from there. But I don't know if Amazon has that. I feel like they probably should, but I'm not going to speak for them on that. But
Yeah.
that is something to be aware of, is that you could go negative. So do definitely check your sale price against the cost of print to make sure you're not going negative.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. I've certainly noticed book prices here in the UK have gone up a pound or two per book. So it's
Yeah.
not just in the indie space. And just to finish off, the other question that just came to me as we were talking was about direct sales.
Yeah.
This is something that I'm sort of hearing more and more authors talk about, if not actually kind of implementing just yet, but it feels like something that's eventually going to come. Do you
Yeah.
think this is something that Draft2Digital might be able to sort of incorporate into their portfolio of offerings? Or
We've been talking about this internally, and we've come up with a few ideas. Nothing we're prepared to implement yet, but we definitely see that as there's something there. Now we acquired Smashwords last year, and that means we own the Smashwords store, and we are currently working behind the scenes to get that kind of at Draft2Digital shape. And then Smashwords is going to pivot from being author services to being exclusively reader facing, and that with that Smashwords store, it's not direct sales, but I will say, right, that we're currently offering it can range slightly depending on various factors, but it'd be like an 80 to 85% royalty, which is the highest royalty you can get from a retailer in the business. So while it's not direct sales, it's not far off, because I sell direct on PayHip, and my royalty is effectively 97% because there's a 3% cost for processing the payment. So that is big. But I like having that option, and I sell a couple of books here and there on that platform. But I will say this: the one thing that you're missing at that is the reporting. And by that I mean reporting to bestseller lists. So Smashwords actually reports to several of the big lists, we'll say. I can't name them legally, but our sales get reported to, will affect your rating across the board at various sites. And so while you are maybe making about 10% less than you would selling direct, you're making about 10 to 20% more than you would selling at other retailers. And it still counts toward, if you do really well, it counts toward like a bestseller ranking somewhere. And and then we've got sales and coupons and all kinds of things that authors love. We just announced the Smashwords store coupons for our D2D authors like a month ago. So there's all these things that we're building and continuing to build on that front that I think will make that if not a direct sale choice, I think it's the closest thing to direct sales that you can get and still have all the benefits of being in retail. That said, we support, so if you have PayHip if you're selling on PayHip, the universal book links we discussed earlier from Books to Read, that can include a link to your PayHip store. And you can even make that the first link on the list. So if you are trying to push direct sales, you have some tools to help with that.
Gosh, it just shows how it is possible to have a company that can not only survive but thrive and push new boundaries and offer new things, and make a profit.
Yeah,
and still offer authors a fair deal and kind of recoup what they've put in. And I think Draft2Digital are doing a marvelous job.
Believe me, there's been times where we've cut ourselves. There's been plenty of times where we've taken a hit financially in order to protect the authors or make sure they got the best deal. The thing that comes to mind is like in 2020, Barnes & Noble at one point announced that they weren't going to be able to pay authors for one reason or another. They were going to withhold those payments for a time. I don't know how long, but we announced immediately after that, we believed that Barnes & Noble was still solid, that they were going to follow through and pay. So we were going to take all the risk and make sure that we paid the authors for those sales. And then it would just be on us versus, not versus, but we would work with Barnes & Noble to make sure they paid us back. So, there's been several times in the company's history since I've been there, that we have very graciously taken hits like that. Like and I say that because the leadership above me is the one that makes all those decisions. I know Chris Austin is our CEO, and he's very keen on making sure that authors are always taken care of first. It's that, that's the rule. And we set aside, we've set aside some money over the years for making sure that authors get paid. We've had retailers. We ditched one of our retailers in the past couple of years because they were not paying. And we made sure the authors got paid. And so that debt is still outstanding, but it's outstanding toward us. It's not something we pass along to the authors. And we've always been very good at that. It's one of the reasons I've always loved the company.
I think that is the perfect way to end our conversation today, just on the integrity of Draft2Digital. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. It's been lovely learning more about you, and then also behind the scenes of Draft2Digital. Thank you.
Anytime.